Millionaire CEO left pregnant girlfriend. His ex-wife's return destroyed everything. Dear God, for every woman holding the weight of silence, for every man too afraid to love fully, for every child, formed in secret but destined for light, may this story be a mirror, a warning, and a warm hand in the dark. Amen. Welcome back to Mr. Comfort Stories, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. Some people come into your life like promises, others leave like warnings. This story begins on a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where nothing seems wrong until everything is. Todd sat in his spotless apartment, sipping his coffee, scrolling his phone. Stock alerts, emails, calendar invites. Not a single message from Annabelle. They'd been seeing each other, but he hated calling it that. She called it love. He called it convenient. She stood outside his door, her hands shaking as she stared at the test in her bag. 2 lines, no doubt. When he opened the door and saw her face, he knew. You're pregnant? Todd snarled. This wasn't part of the deal. That line hit harder than any slap. Annabelle's lips trembled. Todd, I thought we were... He cut her off. We were nothing. You knew the rules. Her breath caught. Her knees felt weak, but she stayed standing. For the baby. You're just going to leave? She asked, her voice cracking. He didn't flinch. I have meetings. And with that, he brushed past her like she never mattered. Her hand gripped the wall for balance, her other hand still holding the test. Have you ever trusted someone only to be crushed? What would you do if the person you loved abandoned you with a child? Because that's what happened here. If no woman should face pregnancy alone, hit like now. She didn't scream. She didn't chase after him. She simply closed his door, walked back to her car, and sat still for a long time. The kind of stillness that only comes after something breaks inside you. Annabelle had grown up believing in effort, that if you love harder, stay longer, give more, things work out. But this wasn't a movie. This wasn't a slow breakup. This was a man wiping his hands clean like she was dirt under his nails. She looked down at the test in her purse again. Her body had already started to change. Her cravings, her fatigue, her swelling heart. Now all of it felt like a punishment. How did we go from whispering dreams in his bed to this? Why wasn't I enough to make him stay? What do I tell my parents? Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The roads ahead looked blurry, not from the rain, but from her eyes. She remembered the little ways Todd used to kiss her hand before they slept, the way he once told her she was the calm in his chaos. Lies, sweet-sounding lies. The truth was clear now. He never saw her as more than a side note. Annabelle didn't cry on the way home. She screamed into a pillow when she got inside, sank to the floor of her small apartment, and stayed there for hours. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with yelling. Sometimes it's quiet, cold, sharp, like a man closing a door and pretending you never existed. That was the day Annabelle realized she had no one but herself, and someone growing inside her. If you've ever had to gather yourself from the floor with no one watching, drop a comment below and tell us, how did you survive? 2 days passed. No call, no message, no knock on the door. Annabelle knew then that Todd wasn't coming back. She stood in her bathroom, the same place she first held the test. Only now, her eyes looked harder in the mirror. Her belly still flat, her heart still shattered, but her resolve quietly forming. You won't be a mistake. You didn't ask to come here, but now that you are, I will show you love, even if I'm the only one who ever does. She booked her first prenatal appointment that afternoon. The receptionist asked, will the father be joining? No, she said, soft but firm. He won't. No explanations. No defense. Just the truth. She walked into that clinic not as someone abandoned, but as someone choosing. Choosing to carry on. Choosing to protect a child that hadn't even blinked in the world yet. She didn't have a perfect job. She didn't have a savings account, but she had a backbone, and it was slowly straightening. Not every decision is made with applause. Some are made in silence. in small rooms, by women no one claps for. Annabelle didn't post on social media. She didn't write a long caption. She simply went to work the next morning, one hand over her stomach and the other clutching her keys. If you've ever made a hard choice without backup or applause, if you've ever kept going without needing validation, leave A in the comments. Someone else needs to know they're not the only one. 7 months went by, 7 long months of swollen ankles, grocery line stairs, and sleeping on one side. Annabelle never said his name again. Not to co-workers, not to the clerk at the baby store, not even to herself. She created a registry at a local baby boutique, not because she expected anything, but because it was part of the checklist the nurse gave her. She clicked through the items like she was shopping for someone else's life. A crib she couldn't afford, diapers she'd ration, a car seat she would buy used. She didn't invite anyone. She had no one to invite. Sales lady, do you have a support person or partner we should include on the contact sheet? Annabelle, smiling softly, no ma'am, it's just me and her. Sales lady, pausing, a girl. Annabelle, yes. That was the first time she'd said it out loud. A girl. The sales lady gave her a tight, knowing smile. She walked the aisles alone, belly out, dignity intact. No friends gathered around her. No gifts, no games, no pink balloons. Just her. But life has a way of sending people when you least expect them. A soft-spoken woman, maybe in her 50s, approached. "Excuse me," she said. "I overheard you at the counter about the baby." Annabelle nodded. The woman handed her a folded receipt and whispered, "Take that stroller to your car. It's covered. God bless you." Before Annabelle could speak, the woman was already gone. Sometimes angels don't wear wings. Sometimes they're strangers in line behind you. If someone ever surprised you with kindness when you needed it most, drop a thank you in the comments. Let that spirit keep moving. When the contractions started, it was raining, not the loud, violent kind, just a quiet, steady pour, like the sky was keeping her company. Annabelle arrived at the hospital alone, no hand to hold, no one to pace the hallway, no name on the emergency contact form. The nurses didn't ask twice. They just did what they were trained to do, take care of her. "Nurse, deep breath, Mama. You're almost there." Annabelle clenched the sides of the bed. Her heart raced, not from fear, but grief. She didn't want to cry, not while her daughter was entering the world. "Doctor," one more push, just one, a scream, a final push, and then the cry of a child who had no father in the room to hear her. They laid the baby on her chest, sticky, breathing, alive. "She's perfect," the nurse whispered. Annabelle didn't respond. She couldn't. Her whole body trembled with everything she'd held in for months. "Nurse, have you chosen a name?" Annabelle looked down at the little girl, her eyes barely open, fists tight, skin warm. "Annabelle, Mara, nurse, that's beautiful. What does it mean?" Annabelle, bitterness. A pause. Annabelle, but not forever. She didn't name her after love. She named her after the pain she survived. But names are beginnings, not endings. Mara would grow, and Annabelle, she would rise. Have you ever rebuilt yourself from the floor up? Comment, "I'm still standing if life knocked you down but never took your soul." Annabelle hadn't cried since the night Todd left. Not because she didn't feel broken, but because she couldn't afford to be. Rent had to be paid, groceries had to be bought, and the child inside her had to be protected from the pain of her world falling apart. She moved into a cramped room above a laundromat on the east side of town. The windows barely opened and the pipes clanked all night, but it was hers. She paid the deposit with what was left of her savings and picked up a job folding clothes downstairs. No maternity benefits, no medical insurance, but no pity either. That mattered more than anything. She wore oversized sweaters to hide her belly from her boss. The nausea was brutal, especially in the mornings. Once, she blacked out in the back room. A customer found her slumped beside a pile of damp towels. They called an ambulance, and the ER visit wiped out the rest of her savings. That night, she skipped dinner. Still, Annabelle made a list. Call the free clinic. Sign up for online GED classes, start journaling the pregnancy, never rely on Todd again. She stuck it to the mirror with a bobby pin and read it every morning before work. She talked to her baby when no one else was around, told them about the folding machines, the scent of fresh cotton, the ache in her ankles, the weight in her heart. She whispered, "I don't know how we'll make it, but we will." She applied for community assistance programs, learned to stretch every dollar, and watched YouTube tutorials on prenatal exercises. One evening, she found a free clinic willing to take her on a sliding scale. That was a win. The nights were quiet, lonelier than she expected. Sometimes she played the voicemail Todd had left her months ago, back when he said, "You're everything I never knew I needed." It used to make her smile. Now it made her sick. By her 5th month, the baby kicked for the first time. It caught her by surprise and brought tears to her eyes. That was the only time she allowed herself to cry. Todd sat in his glass office on the 33rd floor, staring at the skyline like it owed him something. His company, Worthington Holdings, had just closed a deal that made headlines. 20 million in one move. Everyone called him brilliant. But he didn't feel anything. His assistant knocked twice and stepped in without waiting. "Congratulations, sir. Press is calling you a visionary." Todd forced a smile. Set up an interview. He was always busy now. That was the point. The more deals he stacked, the less time he had to think about her, about what he left behind, the baby. He never asked if it was a boy or girl. He didn't want to know. That would make it real. That would make him responsible. Instead, he bought a new car, upgraded his penthouse, dated women who looked good in cocktail dresses, and said the right things in public. He didn't let any of them stay past midnight. One morning, he opened his email and saw a photo of Annabelle, not from her, but from a gossip blog. She was standing outside a laundromat, head down, hands on her belly. The caption read, "Millionaire's Mystery X." He slammed the laptop shut. He never responded to the journalist's request for comment. Instead, he threw himself harder into work. 12-hour meetings, back-to-back calls, quarterly targets, stock options. He became a machine. But guilt doesn't disappear. It just hides better in busy calendars. At night, when the office emptied out and the silence pressed in, he'd glance at the old silver chain in his drawer, the one Annabelle had gifted him on his 32nd birthday. She'd engraved it with the words, "Real love doesn't leave." He should have tossed it. He didn't. Every now and then, he dreamed of her. Not the night she cried, but the nights before that. Her laugh, the way she tucked her feet under her on his couch, the way she looked at him like he was a good man. He used to believe her. But now, deals and documents had become his only truth. He convinced himself she'd moved on. Maybe the baby wasn't even his, maybe she played him. It was easier to believe that than face what he'd done. Todd was deep into a boardroom pitch when his phone vibrated. He ignored it. Another buzz. Then another. 3 missed calls from the same number. No name. Unknown. By the 4th buzz, irritation twisted his brow. He silenced it again. After the meeting, he walked into his office and picked up the phone, ready to block the number. But something stopped him. There was a message. One line. No hello. No emotion. Just 5 words. "It's me. I'm in town." He stared at the screen. Candice. His chest tightened. That name hadn't touched his ears in 2 years. Not since the divorce. She'd vanished. No goodbye. No updates. No trace. Just served him with papers and left. And now she was here. Todd sat down, throat dry. His fingers hovered over the call history. He replayed their last fight in his head, her tears, his silence, her final look of disgust as she walked out of their marriage. He told himself she was part of another life, another version of him, before Annabelle, before guilt took permanent residence in his chest. He called back. It rang once, twice. "Hello, Todd." That voice, smooth, Cold. Familiar. Candice? His voice cracked, sharper than he expected. What do you want? A soft chuckle came through. Relax, I'm not here to ruin your press tour. Yet, he stood up. What does that mean? I saw your face all over the business news. Thought it was time we caught up. Coffee? I don't do reunions, even when the past has receipts. That silenced him. She continued, slow and deliberate. You always thought you were the only one who knew your secrets. But the thing about secrets, Todd, they love company. Cut the games, Candice. No game, just time. I'll be at the Langford Lounge, 8 p.m. Come or don't. But I'd think twice if I were you. The line clicked. Todd stood frozen, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Receipts? Secrets? How much did she know? And why now? He looked down at the silver chain again. For the first time, the office didn't feel safe. Success couldn't cover whatever storm was coming. Todd arrived early. The Langford Lounge glowed with warm lights and low jazz. But he wasn't here for comfort. He ordered a drink and scanned the room. No sign of her. He hated waiting. It gave the past too much space to whisper. 8:06 p.m. She walked in. Black heels, slim coat, hair tied up the same way she wore it when they first met. She hadn't changed much, but her eyes were different, sharper. She sat without a word. You've made your entrance. Now say what you came to say. She smiled, still impatient, still afraid of what silence might reveal. I don't have time for nostalgia. I'm not here for nostalgia. I'm here for truth. Todd clenched his jaw. Whose truth? Candice pulled a small flash drive from her clutch and dropped it on the table. You recognize that? He didn't move, but his heart did. I found it, tucked behind a frame in your old office drawer. I cleared everything before the divorce. You missed something. Todd grabbed it, face pale. This shouldn't exist. I thought the same thing, she said, but it does. Along with emails, bank statements, and voice memos, you kept everything, Todd. Even things you thought you erased. He gripped the edge of the table. What do you want? She leaned forward, eyes locked. You walked away from more than just me. You left me to clean up your messes, business, personal, emotional. And now you're trying to build a legacy on broken promises. His voice dropped. Annabelle has nothing to do with this. Her smile faded. So her name is Annabelle. He cursed under his breath. He had just given her more than she asked. You don't get to silence me anymore, she said. I'm not here for money. I'm not even here for revenge. Then what? I'm here to remind you that lies rot in the dark, and yours are crawling to the surface. She stood up. You said no one knew, but I was always watching. Even after you forgot I existed. Todd sat frozen, flash drive in hand. As she walked out, she paused. Tell your board I'll be speaking at the investor conference. Publicly, Candice was gone. But the damage had already been done. Todd didn't chase her. He didn't call out. He sat there with the flash drive in one hand and a glass of untouched whiskey in the other. She had his full attention now, not because of threats, but because she'd brought something he never expected. Proof. And worse, knowledge of a name she was never supposed to know. He stared blankly at the crowd moving around him. The jazz kept playing. Glasses clinked. A couple laughed nearby, but his world was still, shaken. This wasn't a woman throwing a tantrum. This was Candice, the ex-wife he once underestimated, now returning with more than words. She was calculated, calm, and she knew everything. He knew what was coming next. And for the first time in years, Todd Langford felt the burn of fear behind his collar. So now, it's your turn, viewer. Do you think Candice is bluffing, or does she hold something that could completely ruin Todd? Is she trying to protect someone? Or is this the beginning of a personal war? Comment below. What do you think Candice is planning? Your opinion matters. We read every comment. If you believe secrets always come back to haunt the powerful, hit like. And don't miss what happens next. Things are about to shift fast. Subscribe to Mr. Comfort Stories, where true character is tested and redemption comes with a price. Todd showed up 10 minutes early. He never arrived early for anything, but today he felt like he had no choice. The cafe was tucked into a quiet street corner downtown, far from the buzz of his corporate tower. No boardroom tension, no office power dynamics. Just a few tables, soft music, and the faint hum of espresso machines. He spotted her immediately. Candice, sitting by the window, sunglasses still on, legs crossed, her phone face down in front of her. She didn't look up. She didn't wave. She waited. Todd approached and cleared his throat. "You're early." She removed her sunglasses slowly. "You're later than you used to be." He sat down, unsure whether to smile or not. "You wanted to talk?" Candice tilted her head slightly. "You look good, Todd." "Don't do that," he said quickly, leaning back. "Just say what you need to say." She raised one brow, amused. Still rushing through everything like it's a business pitch. A server interrupted to take their order. Todd didn't touch the menu. Black coffee. Candice looked directly at the server. Chamomile tea. No sugar. They sat in silence after that. A long, uncomfortable pause. Todd finally asked, "Why are we doing this here?" Candice looked around. Neutral ground. "I didn't want you getting nervous in your tower. Thought I'd give you a familiar setting." "Familiar?" he repeated. "You and I used to meet at cafes like this when things were simpler." Todd glanced away. "Things got complicated." "No," she replied, folding her hands neatly. "You made them complicated." Her tone was cool. Too cool. He searched her face for emotion, anger, sadness, regret, but found none. "Let's not rehash history," he muttered. "Oh, we won't," she said, sipping her tea as it arrived. "We're not here for that." Todd felt the hairs rise slightly on his arm. He couldn't explain it. He hated surprises. And Candice was full of them. They were married for 4 years. Not many people at Todd's company even knew he had been married. It happened before the rise, before the board meetings, before his name held power in the city. He met Candice when he was still building his first firm. She was smart, driven, and saw through his charm before anyone else did. That's what attracted him first. Their relationship had started like most others, full of late-night dinners, whispered plans, and shared ambition. But something shifted once Todd's first big deal landed. He became consumed. Every win made him want more. Every milestone made him colder. Candice tried to hold on. She supported him, even when his hours stretched into dawn and his phone never left the dinner table. She asked for date nights. He responded with, "I'm building this for us." She never signed up for loneliness. Worse, she never signed up for secrecy. By their 3rd year, Todd had stopped checking in altogether. It was like she became background noise. They lived in the same penthouse but existed on different timelines. And then came the lie. One she never confronted him about directly, but she knew. The sudden late-night meetings, the guarded texts, the cologne that wasn't his. She packed her things and left while he was in Tokyo on a business trip. No farewell, no tears. Just a note that read, "You no longer know who I am, and I no longer recognize you. Don't call." He didn't call, didn't chase. He thought she would come back. She didn't. Years passed. And just like that, Candice became a closed file in the drawer of Todd's perfect image. Now, sitting across from her again, he realized he'd buried their story so deep, he forgot how raw it was. But Candice hadn't forgotten. She looked at him like she still saw the man behind the tailored suits, the one who broke her in silence, and rebuilt himself without ever looking back. "So, how's the empire?" Candice asked, stirring her tea slowly. Todd gave a shallow nod. "Growing. Expanding into retail tech next quarter." "Impressive." She didn't sound impressed. He gave a faint smile. "You always said I'd make it big." "I said you were relentless," she corrected. Not that it was a compliment. Todd leaned forward. "Cut the sarcasm. Why are you here, Candice?" She looked directly into his eyes. "To catch up. You don't show up after all these years just to catch up." You don't drink tea with your ex-husband for fun. She smiled sweetly. Why not? You look lonely. His jaw clenched. Let's not pretend we're friends. Candace tilted her head. Fine. You want direct? I've been watching you. Todd narrowed his eyes. Not like that, she said quickly. I've seen the headlines, the glossy covers, the awards. You look so polished now. He folded his arms. You said this wasn't about the past. It's not, she said with a shrug. It's about the present. Candace's smile never faded, but Todd noticed her eyes didn't match. There was something in them. Not anger, not softness either. Calculation. You've changed, he muttered. So have you, she said, sipping again. But I wonder if the new you remembers what the old you left behind. Todd paused. What does that mean? She smiled. You'll see. That smile made his gut turn. He didn't like this. He didn't like feeling unprepared. He didn't like the way she kept control of the conversation. That was his game. And yet, she was doing it better. She checked her watch. I should go. I have things to do. Todd stood, trying to hold on to control. What things? She leaned in slightly. You'll know when it matters. Then she grabbed her bag and walked out, heels clicking softly on the tiled floor, leaving behind a cup half full of tea and a man full of questions. Todd didn't go straight back to the office. He sat in his car, watching people pass by on the sidewalk, none of them aware that the man behind the tinted glass was unraveling. He replayed every second of their coffee meeting. She was calm, almost rehearsed. Her words were measured, her tone steady. But beneath all that charm, something felt carefully constructed. Todd had dealt with competitors who threatened him, ex-partners who tried to sue, rogue employees who leaked sensitive info. But Candace? She was unpredictable. And that scared him more than anything else. Because she didn't need money. She didn't care about status. And most dangerous of all, she knew him. He opened his phone and scrolled through her old contact details. Nothing new. Nothing recent. She'd stayed gone for years. So what changed? Why now? He thought about asking his assistant to pull public records, to find out if she'd been in the country long, maybe even hire someone to shadow her. But he stopped himself. No, that would show weakness, and Todd Langford didn't show weakness. Still, something gnawed at him. Her line, "You'll know when it matters." That wasn't a warning. It was a clock, and he didn't know how long he had before it struck. He tapped the steering wheel lightly, eyes fixed ahead. He had too many moving pieces in his life, too many plans depending on him staying calm, staying smart, staying in control. But now, someone from his past had stepped into his future, uninvited and fully in command. He didn't like the feeling, and deep down, he knew, whatever Candace was about to do, she'd already set it in motion. Todd woke up the next morning with a note on his desk. Not a message from his assistant, not an email alert. A physical note, folded once, unmarked envelope. He froze. No one knew how to get into his penthouse without security clearance. No one. He opened it. Just one line. You forgot something. I didn't see. He stared at the words, every nerve alert. He checked the entire suite. Nothing stolen, nothing touched, everything in place, except his peace of mind. He called down to the building manager. No visitors logged in under her name. No footage of Candace, but she'd been here. He knew it. Later that day, a courier dropped a small box at his office. No sender. Inside was a flash drive. Same shape, same color, same sound it made when it hit the desk. He didn't plug it in immediately. He waited, stared at it like it held a bomb. That night, after everyone left, Todd locked his office, dimmed the lights, and inserted the flash drive into his personal laptop. One folder, no name. He clicked. There were old photos of him and Candace, trips, dinners, even a private journal entry of his he swore he deleted years ago. His chest tightened. At the bottom, one file, watch me. He clicked. It wasn't a video. It was a recorded conversation, audio, between him and someone he hadn't spoken to in years. A man who helped Todd win a lawsuit through unethical means. His voice, clear, sharp, guilty. Candice had it all. His past, his secrets, his weakness. She had reached into a chapter he thought he burned. And now? She was flipping the pages. Candice moved with precision. Late at night, in the quiet corner of her rented condo, she clicked through old emails and archived drives she'd almost forgotten about. Todd had been careless during their marriage, trusting her with too much. Business records, legal drafts, passwords scribbled on napkins and tossed in drawers. She had everything. She downloaded files to a private drive, sorting them one by one. The shell corporations, the questionable offshore transfers, the payoffs made to silence a failed acquisition. She hadn't cared before. Back then, she wanted out, not revenge. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the way Todd dismissed her at that coffee shop, acting as if she was just a past chapter, like she hadn't once known every corner of his ambition, like she hadn't bled through his worst. Candice wasn't angry. Not exactly. But she felt a fire inside that hadn't been there for years. She knew she wasn't in his world anymore. She didn't want to be. But she was going to make sure Todd remembered what he'd tried to forget. The files were ready. A zipped folder labeled February, deceptive, simple, dangerous. She sat back, the glow of her laptop screen casting light on her face, calm and unreadable. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She simply whispered, "You should have left me nothing." Todd never thought anyone would find those records again. It was during the early days of his company, when ambition was louder than caution. He was young, hungry, and desperate to compete. So when a venture partner offered shortcuts, ones that blurred the line between profit and fraud, he didn't ask questions. He signed. The fake vendors, the duplicate invoices, the inflated valuations sent to investors. He'd buried it all under layers of clean paperwork and polished quarterly reports. His board never suspected a thing. The auditors got what they needed. And the rest? Sealed away, protected by his silence and the loyalty of two now retired associates. Until Candice. She found the spreadsheet labeled Q4 adjustments. Names erased, yes, but the numbers? Unmistakable. She remembered the meeting that followed it. Todd had been distant, tense, short-tempered. Now it all made sense. Attached to that spreadsheet were email trails, a memo, one quiet signature on a hidden agreement tied to a Cayman Islands account. She didn't need to say a word. The files would speak for her. She created a secure Dropbox link and masked her identity through an old journalist contact she met during her divorce proceedings. The message was short. "You might want to look into this. Todd Maxwell isn't who the board thinks he is." By morning, the link had been clicked over 120 times. Newsrooms began digging. A finance blogger posted a vague thread about a possible tech scandal brewing at a top investment firm. Rumors stirred quietly, like wind before a storm. Todd, meanwhile, was sipping espresso in his penthouse office, completely unaware. He leaned back in his leather chair, watching the city skyline, thinking about Annabelle, wondering if he had overreacted. Maybe he should check on her. Maybe not. He had work. A board meeting next week. A merger negotiation pending. The past, he thought, had stayed where it belonged. Far away. Silent. But the past wasn't quiet anymore. Annabelle folded the last of the tiny onesies into the drawer. She smiled faintly as she smoothed her palm across the fabric. The soft yellows and creams, the tiny booties, the delicate hats. Every piece reminded her that a life was coming. Her baby, her miracle. There was no space for bitterness in her heart now. Not today. Bills still piled up on the kitchen counter. She hadn't heard back from 2 job interviews. The nausea came and went like clockwork, and her lower back ached more often than not. But she had found a rhythm. She found peace in her little routines. Each morning, she'd start with warm tea, not coffee anymore. She would sit near the window, say a prayer, and press her hand gently against her belly. She didn't know if she was having a boy or girl. She wanted the surprise. She wanted something in her life to feel untouched by the chaos Todd left behind. The nursery was nearly done. A soft grey theme, budget furniture she assembled herself. A mobile made by hand with clouds, stars, and little felt animals. She'd cut and stitched them during sleepless nights, her fingers working quietly while her heart slowly mended. Her neighbour, Mrs. Elkins, had dropped off a bag of diapers and a tin of ginger cookies. "God watches women like you, sweetheart," she said. "You're going to be just fine." Annabelle had hugged her tightly, trying not to cry. She didn't read the headlines that week. She never turned on the news anymore. It was easier not to know what Todd was doing. She had blocked his number. She ignored every email. She refused to let his silence become a source of pain again. But even in her peace, she could feel it, like a shadow she wasn't looking at. The quiet sense that something was coming. She just didn't know what. For now, all she could do was keep going. Her next doctor's appointment was tomorrow. She was measuring healthy. Her baby was growing strong. That was enough. That had to be enough. Annabelle gripped the sides of the examination table, trying to steady her breath. The cold gel on her belly didn't bother her much. What caught her off guard was the soft thump, thump, thump echoing in the room, the baby's heartbeat. Fast, steady, alive. Her eyes filled with tears. "Strong little one," the nurse smiled, handing her a tissue. "Due dates holding steady. Do you have someone coming to help after delivery?" "No," Annabelle said softly. "It's just me." She walked home slowly that day, the fall wind tugging at her coat. Her fingers clenched the printed ultrasound picture in her pocket. She didn't look at it yet. She wasn't ready. Back at her apartment, she lit a candle and sat quietly on the floor of the nursery. Memories hit like waves. Todd's laugh during their weekend trip to Charleston, how he'd traced lazy circles on her back when she curled into his chest. The way he once whispered, "We should name our daughter after your mom if we ever have one." All lies. No, maybe not lies, but temporary truths. She pulled the picture from her coat pocket, stared at the shape of the tiny human forming inside her. The spine, the curled fists, the roundness of the head. "You are mine," she whispered. "You didn't ask for this, but I swear I will never let you feel unwanted." She pinned the sonogram next to her refrigerator, right under her checklist of baby names. Each name had a tiny heart next to it. She hadn't picked one yet, but she was close. Later that night, the heater rumbled to life as she curled in bed, blanket pulled to her chin. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. She didn't answer. Another buzz. Another. Finally, a text. "Unknown, we need to talk. You don't know what's coming." She stared at it, jaw tight. Todd? Or worse, someone else? She blocked the number without replying. Whatever storm waited outside her small apartment, she wasn't going to let it inside. Not tonight. Candace waited until midnight. Her laptop screen glowed against the dark room. The files were zipped, encrypted, and ready. She checked the clock once more, her finger hovering over the send button. Calm, steady breaths. She uploaded the folder to 3 separate journalists she trusted to bite first, 2 business reporters, 1 investigative blogger. Along with the files, she attached a simple subject line. "Start here." No commentary, no explanations. Just the truth, wrapped in numbers and signatures Todd thought had been buried forever. By morning, one of the reporters had responded. Verifying. "This is big. More to come." Candace closed the laptop, leaned back in her chair, and exhaled. She hadn't expected satisfaction. What she felt instead was certainty, the kind that settles in your bones when you know the ground beneath someone else is about to collapse. At 9:15 a.m., a tweet began circulating, breaking. Allegations of financial misconduct tied to Worthington Holdings CEO. Developing story. 10 minutes later, 2 news sites ran short articles. Nothing detailed yet, but enough to stir curiosity. The markets twitched. Analysts whispered. A hashtag began crawling up the trending board. Inside Todd's office tower, staff scrambled. Phones rang non-stop. Assistants ran from one office to another with updates they didn't understand. By noon, the rumor had grown into a storm. A leaked spreadsheet appeared on a finance blog. Todd's signature sat clear as day on the corner of a questionable contract. The story was no longer whispers. It was everywhere. Todd had no idea Candice was the hand behind it. He paced his office, slamming his phone down after a call with legal counsel. His board wanted answers. His investors wanted reassurance. He had none to give. Across town, Candice sipped her tea by the window. Her phone buzzed with alerts from the very news cycle she had unleashed. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply whispered, "Let's see how long you stand without your empire." The storm had started, and Todd Langford was at its center, whether he liked it or not. It started with a single tweet. A faceless account posted, "What if your favorite CEO built his empire on lies? Worthington leaks." Attached was a screenshot, an old document with Todd Worthington's signature next to a shadowy transaction. 10 minutes later, another tweet followed, this time a voice recording. Then, a PDF with more files, names, dates, conversations, some blurred, some not. By noon, Worthington fraud was trending globally. News sites picked it up within the hour. Screenshots flashed across live broadcasts. Blogs posted detailed breakdowns. YouTubers made reaction videos with titles like "The Fall of a Finance Giant" and "Is This the End of Worthington Holdings?" Todd sat in his office, frozen, eyes glued to the massive TV screen mounted on his wall. The anchor's voice echoed around him. This morning, shocking revelations surfaced accusing Todd Worthington, CEO of Worthington Holdings, of historic fraud and unethical financial dealings dating back over a decade. Every word felt like a punch to the ribs. Miles, his assistant, burst into the room. "Sir, the PR team is swamped. Your phone won't stop ringing. CNBC, CNN, Forbes. They want statements, confirmations, denials, something." Todd didn't move. He clicked refresh on his phone. More leaks. More retweets. One post had nearly 1 million views already. He stood slowly and muttered, "Find out where it's coming from." Miles nodded. "Already started tracing IPs, but it's being bounced through multiple servers." Todd stared at the TV as the anchor read excerpts from one of his private recordings. He hadn't heard those words since the day he said them. But someone kept the receipts. By 3 p.m., chaos had bled from the internet into the heart of Worthington Holdings. The boardroom was packed. Executives, lawyers, and PR heads sat around the table, faces grim. The stock ticker outside the window flashed red. Investors were panicking. The company's value had dropped by 24% in 6 hours. Todd stormed in, his face pale but jaw tight. He threw a stack of printouts onto the table. "Damage control. Now." One of the lawyers stood. "We're still verifying authenticity, but several clients have already suspended contracts pending an internal audit." "Which clients?" Todd snapped. "Grayson Securities, Helix Tech, and Midtown Financial." "That's over half our international accounts," another executive muttered. Todd slammed his hand on the table. "Then get them back. Issue statements. Buy time." "They don't want statements," a senior board member cut in. "They want clean hands, Todd." The air turned sharp. "Do we have proof this is fake?" Todd demanded. Silence. "Then we're not denying anything," he said firmly. "Not yet. Not until we know what we're dealing with." Miles rushed in again. "Sir, the New York Times wants an exclusive." "No interviews," Todd barked. "We stay silent until we trace the source." One woman from PR leaned forward. "The silence might be interpreted as guilt. It might also keep us from digging a deeper hole," he shot back. Everyone started speaking at once. Panic built in the room, voices overlapping, accusations flying. People whispered about resignations. Whispers turned into plans. Plans turned into exits. Todd watched it all unfold like a spectator in a dream. His empire, the one he built with sweat, late nights, and ruthless deals, was crumbling around him, and he didn't even know who was swinging the hammer. By nightfall, Todd was in his private suite with his IT chief, Roman. "Trace the source," Todd growled, pacing. "I don't care what it costs." Roman adjusted his glasses, scrolling through lines of code. "It's not some kid with a laptop. This is military-grade masking. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, and they knew you." Todd ran a hand through his hair. "I need a list of anyone with access to those files." "Already compiling." "But sir, some of these documents weren't digital. These are scans." Todd stopped. His heart sank. Scans meant hard copies, and only a handful of people had ever touched them. He stared out the window, mind racing. Who had physical access? Roman didn't need to say the name. Todd already knew. Candice. She had archived everything from his early startup years, handled legal files, organized every cabinet. She had once called herself the memory of the company, and now it seemed she remembered. "Start with her," Todd said. "I want her followed. I want her watched." Quietly, Roman hesitated. "You think she'd risk this kind of exposure?" Todd didn't blink. "I think she already has." But deep down, he wasn't sure what scared him more, that Candice had gone rogue, or that she'd planned this for longer than he ever guessed. In a quiet cafe miles away from the chaos, Candice sat with her tablet open, legs crossed, sipping tea. She refreshed the newsfeed calmly. One headline after another painted Todd Worthington as a man on the edge. Editorials speculated about jail time. Blogs leaked more files. Reddit threads dissected his downfall in real time. She scrolled past them all, pausing only once, on a picture of him walking out of his building, surrounded by reporters, his face tight with panic. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply tapped the screen and whispered, "You always said truth didn't matter." That perception was everything. Her phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted account. "Next batch scheduled?" She typed back, "Hold, let him sweat." Candice closed the tablet and looked out the window. This wasn't revenge for love lost. This wasn't about broken hearts or lonely nights. This was justice. For the deals he made without conscience, for the people he stepped on, for the version of herself she buried to stay in his world. She had warned him once. You build an empire on lies. One day someone comes to collect. He didn't listen. Now, he had no choice. Annabelle sat on the couch, her hands resting on her belly as the news played. Her eyes didn't blink as they showed clips of Todd outside his building, dodging questions. Headlines screamed CEO under fire and Worthington Holdings crumbling. The anchor spoke with urgency, but her voice faded in Annabelle's ears. All she heard were memories. Todd, standing in her doorway, full of promises. Todd, gone the next week. Todd, cold in that last call. She leaned forward and turned up the volume. The screen showed a former employee speaking out. He always had secrets. People were just too scared to dig. Annabelle whispered, "Now they're digging." Her phone buzzed. Talia, her best friend, sent a message. "Girl, your ex just got served by the universe." She didn't reply. She just kept watching. Her eyes were calm, her heart still healing. But there was a strange peace in knowing she hadn't needed revenge. Life handled it. She rubbed her belly gently. "You'll know who your father is one day, but you'll also know who he chose not to be." And that truth would be enough. The media storm raged for days. Headlines morphed into debates. Investors demanded answers. Legal teams went into overdrive. Todd's empire didn't fall in a single day, but its cracks were now visible to the world. In a city obsessed with appearances, the fall of a polished man made noise. But in quiet corners, in a Brooklyn apartment where Annabelle folded baby clothes, and in a small cafe where Candice sipped her tea, the noise was background. Because for those who lived behind the lies, the truth was never surprising. Todd once believed he could bury anything. Old records, broken promises, people. But truth isn't a person you can pay off. It's a shadow that waits. And when it's ready, it doesn't knock. It walks in. The boardroom reeked of tension. Suits lined the mahogany table, eyes fixed on the man who once commanded the room with confidence, Todd Brennan. But today, his voice trembled. His charm? Gone. His shield of arrogance? Shattered. "We've reviewed the leaked documents," one board member said, sliding a printed report across the table. "The offshore accounts, the falsified statements, the cover-ups. It all leads back to you." Todd opened his mouth, but no words came. His throat burned. His chest tightened. "I didn't leak those files," he managed to say. "There's been a misunderstanding." Another board member cut in. "This isn't about who leaked them. This is about the man we trusted to lead our company. The integrity you broke." One by one, the hands went up. A vote, 11 against 1. He was out, just like that. No exit speech. No media prep. No applause. Just the silence of a man watching everything he built burn before his eyes. As Todd stood to leave, cameras flashed outside the building. Journalists shoved microphones toward him. "Mr. Brennan, do you have a statement? Were the allegations true?" He said nothing. His tie felt like a noose. Inside the car, his phone buzzed non-stop. Stockholders, advisors, friends who now wanted nothing to do with him. Todd sank into the seat, ashamed. That night, a message came through. Candace, just a location and a time. No words. Todd hesitated, then went. The rooftop bar was nearly empty. The city lights shimmered around them, but there was no warmth in the air. She turned slowly when he approached, her smile cold. "So, they finally pulled the rug." "You did this," Todd growled. "You set me up." Candace took a slow sip of wine. "Correction. I gave them the truth. They did the rest." He clenched his fists. "You had no right." "I had every right," she snapped, standing. "You think you ruined me and I would just vanish?" "I've known things, Todd. Things I kept buried while you paraded around with your lies and women." Todd blinked, stunned. "I kept copies," she continued. "Emails, financials, photos. Even the audio of you bragging to investors about how easy it was to cheat the system." She dropped a USB on the table. "That's what I gave the press. And trust me, I didn't even use half of what I have." Todd stared at the drive. "Why?" Candace's eyes darkened. "Because you never thought I was smart enough to fight back. You left me with nothing. Now you have nothing." Todd's world tilted. "What else do you have?" he asked, voice shaking. Candace smirked. "You remember your assistant back in 2017, Kara?" Todd stiffened. "You made her terminate the pregnancy, remember?" His jaw locked. "She came to me when you threatened her. I helped her get legal counsel. But she never filed. She couldn't handle it emotionally." Candace slid a manila envelope toward him. "But I kept everything. Her statement, the medical reports, your texts." Todd didn't open it. "Now imagine if this gets out next." He sank into the chair. "You said you wouldn't go this far." "I never said that," Candace corrected. "I said I hadn't gone that far. Yet." Todd stared at her, defeated. "You've always underestimated the quiet ones," she said. He buried his face in his hands. "You got what you wanted," Todd said, rising. "Please, don't drag me further." Candace tilted her head. "Why should I stop now?" "Because I'm human." He exploded. "I made mistakes. I didn't kill anyone. I got greedy." Candace stepped closer. "You destroyed lives, Todd. You used women like toys. You covered fraud with charm. And when someone trusted you, like Annabelle, you walked away without blinking." Todd staggered. "You don't know what I went through. You think trauma gives you the right to hurt others?" He dropped to his knees. "Candace, I'm begging you." Silence. Then she knelt too, staring him straight in the eye. "No. You're begging because for once you can't control the outcome." Tears streamed down his face. "I've lost everything." She whispered, "Now you know how it feels." Todd wandered the streets that night. Rain poured, but he didn't care. The world around him blurred. Lights, noise, people, all meaningless. He ended up in front of his former building. Security didn't recognize him at first. When he got to the penthouse, it was empty, stripped, silent. He fell to the floor, soaking wet, clothes heavy with rain and shame. His phone buzzed. A single message from Annabelle. "Your child kicks now." Todd wept. He'd never hold that child. He'd never get the chance to make it right. Everything he'd built, gone. And it wasn't Candice or Annabelle who truly destroyed him. It was the man in the mirror. If you followed Todd's fall from grace, ask yourself, was this the justice he deserved? Would you have done what Candice did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe every action has a consequence, hit that subscribe button and stay locked in for the final twist. Mr. Comfort Stories, where truth and karma collide. Todd sat alone in a modest diner. No bodyguards, no driver, no suit. Just jeans, a hoodie, and a paper bag of nerves. The man once feared in boardrooms now looked like any other broken soul. He scrolled through his phone, hovering over her name. Annabelle. He hadn't spoken to her since the day he walked out. That memory haunted him every night, her trembling hands holding that test. Her voice soft and shaking, whispering, "I'm pregnant." He tapped call before he could change his mind. It rang, once, twice. "Hello?" Her voice hadn't changed. It still had that calm strength that used to settle his storms. "Annabelle, it's..." Todd. Silence. For a few seconds, the air between them thickened. "I need to see you. Please." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She simply asked, "Why now?" "Because I'm not the same man who left you that day. I need to say what I should have said back then." There was another long pause. "Fine. One coffee. One conversation. That's it." Todd exhaled, a weight slightly lifted. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. But it was a chance. They met at the same park where they once talked about baby names, back when Todd pretended to care. She came alone. Her belly was now showing. She walked with pride, shoulders back, eyes steady. Todd stood up from the bench. "Thank you for coming," he said. Annabelle didn't sit right away. "You said you had something to say." Todd nodded. "I abandoned you. Not because I didn't care, but because I was a coward. I was so focused on my image, my company, my ego. I didn't know how to handle something real." She crossed her arms. "I didn't need you to handle anything. I needed you to be a man." His throat tightened. "I know. And I failed." The wind blew softly between them. Leaves danced at their feet. "I lost everything," he continued. "Candice came back and used things against me I never saw coming. I've been removed from my own company. My reputation is gone. But none of that hurts, as much as knowing I wasn't there for you." He pulled out an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Something to support the baby. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm here now. If you'll let me..." Annabelle looked at the envelope, then at him. "Support isn't money, Todd. It's presence." Annabelle finally sat, legs crossed, face calm, but her eyes burned with memory. "You think showing up now erases the nights I cried alone?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I don't. I just..." "You think I haven't had doors closed in my face? Employers who didn't want to hire a pregnant woman? Doctors I had to face alone? Family who judged me for trusting the wrong man?" Todd lowered his head. "I kept going," she said, "without you. And I built something you don't get to walk into like nothing happened." He nodded slowly. "I'm not asking to be with you. I know I don't deserve that. I'm just asking to be allowed near my child, to be there in any way I can." Annabelle looked out at the ducks by the lake. Her voice softened. "This child will know who you are. I won't lie. But they will also know that I made it on my own. You left me, and I rose." Todd swallowed hard. "I never stopped thinking about you." "That's the thing, Todd," she said, standing up. "I stopped thinking about you a long time ago." She walked away, not fast, not angry, just done. Todd remained on the bench long after she left. He watched the spot where she had stood. Her words echoed. He'd come hoping for mercy, for a sliver of old love. But life doesn't rewind. Actions don't erase. Annabelle had changed. She had grown. She didn't just carry his child, she carried strength he never recognized. Back at his apartment, Todd stood in front of the mirror. The man staring back had nothing left. No boardrooms, no titles, no marriage, no redemption. He opened the baby photo Annabelle sent in a follow-up text. A blurry ultrasound. Still, it gripped him. "I'll do better," he whispered. Not to Annabelle, not for her forgiveness, but for the child he hadn't met yet. Across town, Annabelle sat with her hand on her belly. "You'll know love," she whispered to her unborn. Not from someone who had to be begged to give it, but from someone who chose to. And in that quiet, two people sat alone in different places, connected, by a life they both created, but only one was truly ready to protect. Annabelle clutched her belly in the middle of the grocery aisle. The sharp pain hit her without warning, forcing her to lean against the cart for balance. A store employee noticed her pale face and trembling hands. She waved him off at first, but another jolt of pain made her cry out. Minutes later, she was in the back of an ambulance. At just 33 weeks, this wasn't supposed to be happening. At the hospital, nurses rushed around her. The beeping monitors, the sterile scent, the steady hum of fluorescent lights. It all blurred as fear took over. She'd done everything right. Ate well, rested, took her vitamins. So why now? Her phone buzzed. Multiple missed calls from her friend Lena. Then one unexpected name popped up on the screen. Todd. He'd heard. Somehow he knew. She stared at the name, conflicted. She didn't have the strength to talk. Before she could decide, the door to her room swung open. Todd stood there, breathless, hair disheveled like he had run through a storm. He looked nothing like the arrogant CEO she remembered. His tie was loose, eyes bloodshot, and voice shaking. "I came as soon as I heard," he said. "Is she... Are you both okay?" Annabelle opened her mouth to speak, but the nurse returned with results. The baby's heart rate had dropped briefly, but stabilized. They needed to monitor for the next 48 hours. No guarantee everything would be fine, but no cause for panic yet. Todd sat beside her quietly. No grand speeches, no apologies, just presence. Annabelle glanced at him. His face showed a raw concern she hadn't seen before. Still, she held back. She didn't know what this meant yet, but for now, she was too tired to fight. Todd didn't leave the hospital. He pulled the stiff chair close to Annabelle's bed and stayed there the whole night. No assistant, no emails, no escape. He turned off his phone. For once, the world could wait. Annabelle lay on her side, a fetal monitor strapped to her belly. The soft galloping rhythm of their baby's heartbeat echoed in the room. Her eyes opened now and then, catching glimpses of Todd sitting silently, still, in his wrinkled shirt, hands clasped, eyes never leaving the monitor. At 2 a.m., a nurse brought a blanket and pillow. "You can lie down, sir." "I'm fine," Todd said. He took the blanket, but stayed upright. Annabelle watched him from the corner of her eye. She'd expected him to flee, to send someone else, to make excuses. But he hadn't. She didn't say it out loud, but she noticed everything. The way he looked at her, not with pity, but responsibility. The way he flinched every time the machine made a sound. The way his jaw tightened each time a nurse walked in to adjust the fourth. This wasn't the same man who had once said, this wasn't part of the deal. He reached for her hand around 3 a.m., hesitant but steady. She didn't pull away. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I do," he said. "For once, I need to stay. Not because it's convenient, because I should have never left." Silence filled the space between them. The machines beeped. The four dripped. Their baby kicked again, strong and steady. Todd exhaled. "Does she kick often?" "Mostly when I'm trying to sleep." He smiled faintly. "She's already got attitude." Annabelle almost chuckled. Maybe he'd changed. Maybe not enough. But tonight, he showed up. And that was something. Morning light slipped through the blinds, casting a quiet glow across the hospital room. Annabelle stirred as nurses entered for the morning checks, but Todd had already been up. He hadn't slept a minute. He was standing by the window, arms folded, staring at the parking lot with the same intensity he used to reserve for profit margins and shareholder meetings. But he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about his failures. Todd turned when Annabelle shifted in the bed. "How's the pain?" She nodded. "Tolerable." The doctor came in and explained everything looked better. The baby's heart rate had stabilized. No immediate danger. She might need a few more days of rest, but things were hopeful. When the doctor left, Annabelle looked at Todd. "You stayed. I couldn't leave you like that again." "Why now?" she asked. "Why show up now when I needed you back then?" He took the seat beside her again, his eyes honest this time. "I was a coward. Everything in my life has been about control. You got pregnant, and I didn't plan for it. So I panicked. I ran. I buried myself in my career because it was the one place I still felt like I had power. And when that crumbled, it was the best thing that ever happened to me," he said quietly, "because it forced me to look at who I've been, and it wasn't a good man." Annabelle studied him. No arrogance, no charm to cover the guilt, just truth. "I'm not asking for forgiveness today," he added. "I just wanted to sit here, with you, with her, and be what I should have been from the start." The baby kicked again, almost as if she approved. Annabelle looked away quickly. Her eyes burned. Todd noticed, but said nothing. Instead, he reached out and gently placed his palm on her belly. A silent vow, not spoken, but finally lived. Todd hadn't left Annabelle's side for 48 hours. He helped her to the bathroom. He adjusted her pillows. He made sure the nurses followed every instruction. He asked questions, took notes, and triple-checked medications. There were no grand speeches, no begging for her heart. Just action. Real, small actions. The things she had begged him for months ago, when he gently brushed her hair back from her forehead after she vomited, when he sat by her side, humming quietly during a blood pressure check, when he looked at the monitor like it was more sacred than any financial forecast. That's when Annabelle started seeing him differently. The nurse came in again. "She's responding well to the rest. We might be able to send her home by the end of the week." Todd nodded. "Can we hire a nurse to check on her at home?" Annabelle blinked. "I didn't say I'd let you follow me home." He looked at her, caught off guard but not defensive. "I know. You're showing up now, and I appreciate it. But don't think this erases everything. I'm not here to erase. I'm here to earn." That silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was uncertain, yes, but no longer filled with bitterness. Later, when the room was quiet again, Annabelle rested. Todd remained in the armchair, legs stretched, head leaned back. But he wasn't sleeping. He was watching her breathe, and he was whispering prayers to a God he hadn't spoken to in years, asking for grace, not to win her back, but to be worthy, if the time ever came. "You don't owe me anything," Todd said softly, watching Annabelle stir her soup. She had finally been discharged and was resting on her couch. The hospital bracelet still clung to her wrist, her legs propped with a pillow. Todd had insisted on staying nearby, not hovering, but present. She glanced at him. "I never said I did." He smiled, just a little. "I just want to help. For the baby. For you." Annabelle placed the bowl aside. "You've done more in the past week than you did the whole time I carried this child alone." "I know. I can't change that." "Then why are you here?" Todd looked down at his hands. "Because I needed to stop being a coward. I thought success was everything. That silence and distance protected me. But that day in the hospital, I saw you fight for 2 lives, and I realized I'd been walking away from the only thing that ever mattered." Annabelle's face didn't soften. "And you think showing up now makes it right?" "No. I think showing up now makes it possible." There was a long pause. Then she said, "I'm grateful you were there. Truly. I don't know what I would have done without you." He looked at her with hope flickering in his chest. "But," she added, "gratitude isn't forgiveness. And it's not love. Not yet." Todd nodded slowly. "I understand." She turned to the window. I'll let you be a part of your child's life. We'll figure that out. But anything else? That's not on the table. Not now. He stood, heart aching. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. As he walked out the door, she whispered to herself, for now. Annabelle sat in the hospital garden, her hands resting gently on her belly. The last few days had shifted something in her. She watched the sun dip beyond the city skyline when Todd walked up, quiet, unsure. I just came to see how you're feeling, he said, voice low. She nodded. I'm fine. Baby's fine too. Thanks to you, for being there. Todd's shoulders dropped in relief. I meant what I said. I want to be in your life again. Not just as the father, as the man who once loved you and failed you. She looked at him, really looked. His suit was wrinkled, tie loosened, eyes worn. He wasn't the polished CEO anymore. He was a man who had been broken and was slowly trying to stand. I know you're sorry, she said, her voice soft but steady. I believe you, and I do forgive you. Todd reached out, his hand trembling slightly. But I'm not going back, she added. Not to us. I've built a life without you. I had to, and I'm proud of who I am now. Todd's hand froze mid-air, then dropped. Annabelle smiled sadly. Some things break and stay broken. That doesn't mean we can't move forward, just not as lovers. He nodded, swallowing hard. So what now? You be his father, she said, placing her hand on her belly again. You show up, you protect him, you guide him. That's your role, and I'll honor that. Todd blinked against tears. That's enough. More than I deserve. She stood, brushing off her coat. Goodbye, Todd. He didn't follow her. He simply stood still, breathing in the weight of her grace and the finality of her words. 2 weeks later, Todd showed up at Annabelle's apartment, this time with groceries, not flowers. He knocked gently. When she opened the door, her brow lifted in surprise. I brought you prenatal vitamins and almond milk. You mentioned last time you can't stomach dairy. She looked at the bags, then back at him. You remembered that? I remember a lot now. I just didn't pay attention before. She let him in. He moved cautiously, placing the bags on the counter, like someone who knew his presence was tolerated, not welcomed. Over the next hour, he installed the baby crib, fixed the leaky faucet, and stayed quiet unless spoken to. When she offered him tea, it was the first shared moment that didn't feel strained. You're really trying, she admitted. I am. I need to earn being part of his life. She nodded. You can come to the birthing class next week. If you want. His eyes lit up with something close to gratitude. I'll be there. As he left, she reminded him. This doesn't mean we're rebuilding. I know, he said. One step at a time. I'm not here to win you back. I'm here to be who I should have been from the start. She closed the door behind him, her heart caught between peace and uncertainty. For now, he would be a father, and that was all she needed him to be. Annabelle stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her maternity dress. Her baby shower was today, and the room behind her was filled with soft decorations and laughter. Friends surrounded her, not out of pity, but pride. You look radiant, her friend Dahlia said, handing her a plate of fruit. Thanks. I feel strong. And she did. She remembered the girl who had cried in silence when Todd left, the one who didn't know how she'd face the future alone. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had made choices, stood her ground, and found power in independence. Todd arrived later, helping with the gifts and joking with Dahlia's husband. He didn't try to sit beside her, didn't try to steal attention. Instead, he stood near, respectful, helpful, present. When he handed her a card, she opened it carefully. Inside, a handwritten note read, "Thank you for our son. Thank you for your strength. I promise to protect what you built." She looked up, eyes glistening, and mouthed a quiet thank you. Later that night, after everyone left, she sat alone in her room. The journey had been hard, but she had made it through. She wasn't waiting for a man to rescue her. She had rescued herself. In a quiet town upstate, Candace sat in her lawyer's office, signing the final paperwork. The settlement with Todd's company had gone through. She was wealthy now. The media had moved on. "You've done well," her lawyer said. Candice gave a tight smile. "I didn't do this for the money. Then why did you do it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the framed picture on the lawyer's desk, a photo of a happy family. A wife, a husband, a child. Candice hadn't just taken revenge. She had burned bridges, walked away from a man she once loved, and exposed secrets that would never be buried again. Her phone buzzed. A message from Todd. "Thank you. You freed me from my own lies." She deleted the message without responding. As she walked outside, wind brushing her coat, her steps were firm. She had won, but it hadn't felt like triumph. It felt like an ending. Todd stood in his empty penthouse, the silence louder than any crowd. He had power once. He had control, but he didn't have peace. Annabelle had forgiven him, but not returned. Candice had exposed him, but walked away. He had no lovers, no job, and no spotlight anymore. Just memories. He looked at a photo of his unborn child Annabelle had framed and gifted him at the baby shower. It sat on his mantel, next to the keys he no longer used for the office. He touched the frame and whispered, "I'll be better for you." Sometimes pain wakes us. Sometimes we only learn love through loss. Todd had shut the door on Annabelle's trust once. That door didn't reopen. It stayed closed, not out of bitterness, but out of growth. Annabelle had chosen strength, and for once in his life, Todd respected that. The first time Todd held his daughter without hospital walls or legal threats between them, something cracked open inside him. She was swaddled in pale yellow, eyes closed, fists balled at her sides. Annabelle had allowed him a Saturday morning visit. No lawyers, no supervision, just a father and his newborn. Todd didn't come with grand speeches. He came with a warm bottle, a baby carrier he bought on his own, and a quiet heart full of intention. He fed her, changed her diaper, and rocked her when she fussed. Every small task felt like a sacred responsibility. Every cry reminded him what absence had cost. Over the following weeks, he showed up early and stayed late. He didn't ask for more than what Annabelle allowed. No manipulation, no self-pity. He knew his past had earned him restraint. Instead, he listened to Annabelle's instructions, to his daughter's coups, to silence. And in that silence, he rebuilt himself. He stopped chasing public redemption. His resignation from the company remained permanent. He sold the penthouse and moved into a modest apartment closer to Annabelle's neighborhood. No press, no investors, no lavish displays, just routine and humility. When his daughter smiled at him for the first time, it wasn't on a stage or camera. It was in his small living room, while he clumsily read her a picture book upside down. She giggled, and Todd cried quietly. He still carried shame. But now, he carried diapers and a diaper bag too. He carried his daughter's car seat to doctor's appointments, wiped spit up from his shirt, and memorized lullabies he never imagined singing. Every moment was earned, and while Annabelle didn't speak much beyond logistics, her eyes softened slowly, not in invitation, but in acknowledgement. He was trying, for once, not for her, not for business, but for his daughter. And that was enough. Annabelle's mornings began before sunrise now, not for emails or conference calls, but to sterilize baby bottles, review her business, orders, and feed her daughter while watching the world grow light through her window. She'd launched her small business from their garage apartment, a handmade candle line inspired by her pregnancy cravings and late-night calming scents. Lavender Dream, Citrus Hope, Vanilla Courage. Each label came with a quote she wrote from the heart. Each candle came with healing in mind. What started as therapy became income. What became income turned into influence. Local markets began stocking her brand. Bloggers reached out for features. But Annabelle didn't chase viral fame. She chased consistency. She balanced marketing calls while her baby napped on her chest. She packaged shipments with one hand while bouncing a fussy infant with the other. Her success wasn't glamorous. It was hard-earned, slow, and filled with moments no one saw, spit-up stained tops, 2 a.m. feedings, deep sighs over bills. But she never felt more whole. Her peace wasn't loud, it was structured. She built routines, accepted help, and smiled more. Not because things were easy, but because she'd survived hard things and come out stronger. She didn't need rescuing. She needed quiet, control, safety, and she gave that to herself. She no longer jumped when her phone rang. She no longer checked social media to see what the world thought of her past. She stopped explaining her choices to anyone who didn't live under her roof. People asked if she would return to the corporate world. Maybe someday, but not today. Today, she was busy being a mother, busy building something from the ashes of betrayal, busy being free. Friends nudged gently. "You'll find someone better," they'd say. "Someone who treats you right." Annabelle would smile, thank them, and change the subject. She wasn't afraid of love. She was just no longer obsessed with chasing it. Romance wasn't on her schedule. Healing was. Growth was. Her daughter was. She deleted dating apps. She turned down setups, not because she'd closed her heart, but because she was finally learning to live with it open and unguarded. For herself, and for the first time in a long time, she was enough. There were nights she ached, not for a man, but for ease, for a shoulder, for shared silence after a long day, but she held herself through those moments. She'd held herself through worse. Her peace had cost her a lot, but it gave her everything in return. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see leftover or abandoned. She saw a woman who chose herself. There was power in that. Power in choosing when and how she shared her space. Power in watching her daughter sleep without fearing the future. Power in waking up to quiet and knowing it wasn't empty. It was safe. No, there wasn't a man in her life, but there was strength, joy, laughter. That was enough. A voice from the past speaks softly, not to blame, not to shame, but to remind. When you walk away from love, don't be surprised when it no longer waits for you. Betrayal costs more than money. It costs people. Todd learned that the hard way. You can't abandon something precious, chase noise, and expect silence to stay loyal. Love is patient, yes, but it's not a doormat. It doesn't beg to be chosen. When you turn your back on someone who stood by you, you gamble with more than their trust. You gamble with time, with presence, with forever. And when you return, changed, humbled, aching, it may be too late. Some doors, once closed, don't open again, not because of bitterness, but because of boundaries. Love deserves respect. And those who learn that too late often find themselves holding apologies no one is obligated to accept. So cherish what's real, fight for what matters, stay present when it's hard. Don't trade connection for ego, because not every story has a second act. Did this story touch your heart? Did it remind you of someone who walked away too soon, or someone who stayed silent when you needed them most? Then share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Let it be the nudge someone needs to choose love before it's too late. And if you found meaning, healing, or even a little peace in this journey, don't scroll away just yet. Subscribe to Mr. Comfort Stories. This is where real hearts find real healing, where strength looks like silence and power looks like peace. Your story matters, and so does the next chapter. Comment below, "I choose peace." Like the video to support stories that uplift. Share it with someone still healing. And subscribe so you never miss a story that speaks to the soul. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we build bridges, one heart at a time. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.